Well, for decades, American beef has been restricted in Australia out of fears of a spread of mad cow disease. The US has often been critical of this because America takes so much of our beef. But might that be about to change? According to 9 newspapers this morning, allowing some of it here could form part of trade negotiations with the Trump administration. Well, joining us live now is our Friday panel, National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie and the Independent MP Zali Steggall. Good morning to you both. So I spoke to the National Farmers Federation last year about this, and their strong view was that American beef was a non-starter here because if disease got out, it could decimate our industry. So starting with you, Bridget, the Nationals, how do the Nats feel about this?
Very strongly. We think our, $8.4 billion beef export industry needs to be protected. We need to be making decisions about importing beef based on science and the biosecurity risk posed by those imports, not in some sort of compromised deal or no deal trade-off with the United States. We know that the United States beef imports have been restricted since mad cow disease. And, since 2009, we've allowed beef imports if the beef is born, raised and slaughtered in the United States according to those protocols. What we know, though, about the US beef industry is they access cattle from Canada and Mexico, and we don't have those sort of relationships. So I think the big concern for the government here in the reports today in the 9 papers is that it seems this is, again, one of the most anti-farming governments, if these reports are true. We've got the live sheep trade cancelled, we've got the super tax on farmers, we've got the methane pledge, and now potentially using our beef industry and our 63,000 beef farmers as a pawn in some sort of trade deal instead of basing these decisions on science.
Sure, yeah, and there is the caveat there that if that report is true, but sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. And Zali, your view on this, how would you feel about this forming part of, shall we say, getting a better trade deal with the Americans?
Look, I think it's very concerning if these reports are true, because it does mean the Albanese government is picking and choosing which industries it's going to fight for and protect. And I do agree with Bridget. It would be incredibly concerning for the Albanese government to be prepared to put on the table as part of negotiations, changing the rules we have in relation to the import of beef. I think the government should be standing up for the Australian industry. I think this is very concerning. But look, it is a pattern. I don't know that the Albanese government generally stands up very well to big interest in negotiations. We saw that with Woodside, and I think we're going to see this now in relation to industries and dealing with the US.
Well, we've got agreement this morning, folks. This is amazing.
I know.
And we might get another one here too, because we'll talk about super and the super tax. Zali, the coalition dealt itself out of negotiations. Labor doesn't need the appendants when it comes to taxing those high super accounts, but would you have been with them? Would you have been with the coalition or Labor on this?
No, I've opposed these changes since they were introduced last year. I think the lack of indexation is incredibly concerning because it will have a much more far-reaching impact than what the government's coming clean about. I also think the proposal to tax unrealised capital gains is really problematic, because I think in circumstances where you have a high asset worth but not cash flow, it's going to create some difficulties. And I think it's going to have a stymieing effect on innovation and other areas. So I think it's got a lot of unintended consequences. And I think it's disingenuous of the government, because they talk about, building budget repair and building revenue, but they're not prepared to amend their petroleum resource rent tax, which is returning nearly half of what was projected from the super profits of companies like Woodside. So I think it's very disingenuous of the Albanese government in how they're going after individual endeavour rather than the big super multinational profits.
Yeah, and it does like to point out that this is going to affect a small amount of people, but it won't over the long term. And also there's an interesting piece in the Australian today, Bridget, where the report is that Labor eyed initially tax exemptions for farms and small businesses until that was knocked on the head. How do you feel about all of that?
Well, I think the Treasurer should listen to his boss, the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister made it really clear that he was open to compromise, to listen to the experts, particularly about the taxation of unrealised gains, paper profits, which are going to impact small businesses and farmers having to sell assets to pay their tax bill, and the indexation piece. I mean, without indexing the $3 million cap, we're going to see in 3, 4, 5 decades' time the same kind of bracket creep scourge that we're seeing in our income tax regime. And as you've seen in reports in the papers today, that's hundreds of thousands of workers right now, today, in their 20s, are going to be captured by this tax. So,
yeah.
Jim Chalmers, listen to your boss. He wants to listen to the experts. You've got the additional advice from Treasury. Use it rather than steamroll and do some dirty deal with the Greens.
All right, Bridget and Zali agreeing on both topics today. I need to go and have a lie down. Good to see you both.
Have a good one.
Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.